folks joining us. Let me turn on chat here. Oh, yes. So Jess, oh, you are here. Good. Thanks for that sweet message. That was awesome. She said that yes, the focaccia was awesome. I did a garlic parmesan version. That sounds really good too. That's awesome. So fun. Let me see. Yeah, we have a few more joining us. I know John was going to join us. He was asking some questions before class. And so I wanted to address those questions. See a couple more people coming on. So Deborah said, I tried making bread and got PTSD from the experience. This was great. Another bread monster created. Patty, look where you started there. You can turn your mic on if you want to.
It was you who started it, but we willingly followed along.
Just what I need during COVID is something other great to eat.
Well, it's fun to expand our repertoire, right? Because like I said, I mean, I kind of forgot that I had made focaccia for so long, and then out of the blue it pops up again, and you kind of cycle through those recipes that you make once a year, once every couple of years.
I mentioned to you that I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I think my parents, when they came here, they embraced the United States, and no more of that homemade bread stuff. They could just buy it at the store. And so I didn't learn how to do all those wonderful things, which is really sad because my mother was an excellent cook and baker. But thank you. I just had that, like her PTSD. Yeah, that describes me to a T. But not anymore. Now I'm homemade cinnamon rolls.
Fantastic.
And I'm gonna next thing I'm gonna do is pizza dough, because I mean, really,
yeah,
I have to make pizza dough.
Actually, I want to do that this summer with you guys. Show you how to not only make pizza dough, but do it out on the grill. You'll find a whole new appreciation for making pizza. It's a lot of fun. So we are adding that. But also just to comment on what you said, Patty, is that, your heritage and your culture is wrapped up Italian, and, you maybe didn't learn early on or use those recipes and use that style. But now that you've made that connection, with that, we're going to talk about it next week, but how that kind of is your story now. You're relating to the food that you cook. And then if you're sharing it with folks, they relate to it just by you talking to us about it now. We all can look at our own heritage and think about the recipes that we want to do in our own family. So that's incredible. I love that you shared that. So good. Okay, so I think we have probably most people on right now. So welcome everyone. Happy Monday, as we like to say. I can't remember who shared about the Ligurian focaccia last week. That was super fun to look up, read that recipe, and learn about that salt water that they add to the top of the focaccia. That was super interesting. So keep sharing those interesting tidbits. That is fun, and I'm adding that one to a list to try. But again, for all you guys who are just joining, super fun that you guys have shared all your pictures and successes with all of us. I see that we have a question coming in. I have buttermilk, cultured blend, dry. How much buttermilk will we need so I can mix that? We are going to be using 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk, just so you know. So before we start with our recipe today, John had asked me last week, and a couple of other people had asked me if I could start off with the approach of what's called mise en place. And thrilled to say that because I have a minor in French. Mise en place means to put into place. And what that means for a recipe is that you're putting into place every single thing that you need. Now, that's what restaurants do. And they pre-measure everything out, and they have it down to an exact science because they have to be super efficient with their time and how they do it. And they want it to come out perfect the same way every single time. And so after John had mentioned that, you know, I always try to give the recipe now at the start. So I want to do that real quick so I don't forget. And I've added in 2 recipes today, by the way. I'll tell you more about that in a second. But the recipe is posted, so whoever wants to print it can print it, or you can pull it up on your screen and follow along with the recipe. And we're making maple scones today. And then my personal favorite is lemon poppy seed scones. And so I included that recipe on there as well. And I know, John, you were missing maple extract for today's recipe. And you asked if you could substitute with vanilla or almond extract. You can substitute, I would suggest maybe start with vanilla extract. Just your flavoring is going to be different for your scone. You're going to create a vanilla scone. Someone had also asked if they could use maple syrup. And so what I would recommend, I tested that over the weekend, and you don't get the intensity of flavor that you would want out of the maple portion of that. You can still use it, just know it's not quite as intense maple flavor. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. We'll walk through it as we go through the recipe, but let me just go back to the mise en place method that John was talking about, where you measure every single thing out and you have it all laid out. And like I had shared, that's what restaurants do. And something I've been trying to be very careful with these classes is I want to make them truly authentic to how I bake and teach. And so I don't measure every single thing out and have it all prepped in advance. What I like to do is make sure all the ingredients are available. So there's a subtle difference, and you'll see that I write that in the recipes to lay out all your tools and ingredients. And the reason being is because I really want you guys to find your own rhythm in the kitchen. I thought of Victoria, you know, a couple of weeks ago where she was dancing when she was eating the rosemary dinner rolls, and that was so cute. And I wanted to share something with you guys today, kind of my rhythm in the kitchen. And so I changed our view this week. I have what I call a baking center, is what I call it. It's this fun place that I find enjoyment in my kitchen. And so I want you guys to find your way in your kitchen and what brings you joy and enjoyment, and introduce that when you're making something. If you want structure and order, do what John said. Do the mise en place and lay it all out and have it all ready to go. My style is a little bit more kind of flighty, so to speak. So I have a baking center I'll show you guys. So I put all those jars that I've shared with you, they go all the way up to the ceiling. And I like to kind of dance back and forth as I'm making something. I know I get to go over here. This is where I'm super orderly, and I'm more of that creative kind of person who's not structure and order. But this makes me feel like I got a little bit in it, of structure and order in my life. And so I love that. And it makes me happy. And I'll share another thing that I do that I've shared with folks before as we get going in the recipe. I want you guys to find things in your kitchen, whether it's the jars that you use or the tool, like what Tina had shared with us with the Danish whisk. I want you guys to add that into your life and bring joy into your kitchen. And the reason, I guess, also that I don't do the mise en place is because I feel like my style of teaching is to really get you guys to use your senses. So in each class, we talk about the touch and the feel of something, the sight, the sounds, the smells, all of that. So it becomes this true sensory experience for you And so that's my method. And I just don't want you guys to become robots and parrots of what I'm doing. I want you to find your way that brings you joy. And that's different for every single person. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. But I will go ahead and just go through that ingredient list that the recipe has. We're going to need all-purpose flour. So we have that. We're going to need brown sugar. And then we're going to need baking powder and some salt and cinnamon. And you guys can look around and make sure you have all of that. We're going to be using that roasted cinnamon that we discovered. So that's fun. And then you're going to need butter. You're going to need eggs and buttermilk. If you have that sitting out on your counter, what I want you to do is gather it all back up and put it in your refrigerator. And I'll talk about that here in a second about why we need that in our refrigerator. But put your egg back in there, your buttermilk and your butter back in the refrigerator for now. The other ingredients that we're going to need is maple extract. If you don't have that, as John had mentioned, you can substitute vanilla. You can substitute almond extract. You're just not going to get a maple scone if you substitute. And, you know, John, I wanted to point out, if you have lemons on hand, switch to the other recipe and make the lemon poppy seed. If you don't have poppy seeds, don't worry about it. Just skip the poppy seeds and make a lemon scone with us today if you happen to have fresh lemons on hand. And then let me think. Okay, so powdered sugar would be the other ingredient. And then later on, we're going to need some cream or milk for our glaze on top. So that should get you guys set before we get going here. I know we have some questions coming in. Let's see. Do you make your own brown sugar? I've made my own brown sugar before out of necessity because I didn't have any on hand. You combine regular sugar along with molasses, and that will give you brown sugar. So you can certainly do that. It actually is a much more intense flavor, which is kind of fun to use. Susan said, when I feel down, I like to bake. It's amazing how you talk about having joy in the kitchen. It does give me comfort. Ah, that's so nice to hear, Susan. I feel the same way. I think so many of us, I mean, if you're taking this class, I assume that you guys have joy in the kitchen. And, you know, I hope it translates via Zoom, the way that we're doing this. We can all find joy, not only with each other, but if we're doing these on our own too. So that's a good thing to have right now. So John, he found a lemon. Yay. Okay. So John, what I want you to do is zest that lemon. And then I want you to squeeze every ounce that you can get out of that lemon. Okay. As much as you can. And you follow along and you're going to be doing the lemon scone recipe. You're going to love it. It's my favorite one. When I decided about what to share with you guys, I picked maple because of winter, but my true favorite is the lemon one. So that's great that you can substitute with that. So let's get started. One other note, and I know I'm talking a lot before we even have gotten started today. This recipe I typically make with a food processor. That's my other go-to tool, so to speak. I have the KitchenAid, but I also use a food processor for when I make scones and lots of other things. But I decided today I didn't want to, you know, turn anyone off. If you don't have a food processor at home, I'll show you how to make them by hand. It's not hard. It's just how you cut in the butter is much easier in a food processor, and it goes so fast. So maybe I cheat a little by using a food processor. But today we're just going to do it all by hand, so you guys get the full gist of it. And someone asked, can you use maple sugar for maple extract? Like adjust the sugar? You know, that's a good question, Deborah. I probably can't be 100% sure in answering that question. I think if you substituted let me think, we're dealing with brown sugar. You know, you could do half and half, maybe the brown sugar and then add in the other half as the, let me think about that. Yeah, if you did half and half with the maple sugar versus the brown sugar, you would get that touch of maple in, and then we could use that sugar in the glaze at the end. So if you have vanilla on hand, put in vanilla for the extract portion so you get that added moisture into the recipe. But just know the flavor profile will change just a little bit. Okay, so enough talking. I've been talking a lot. So let's start. We're going to start off with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. There's 1. And there's 2. And I see people going in on the chat here. Let me just double check. Oh, Patty, I want to talk about that one. I'll touch upon that one about the baking center when we have a break. So put all your questions in the chat, or just turn off your or turn on your microphone and ask me as we go along if you have a particular question about the recipe. But I'll come back to the chat when we have a little bit of a break here. Okay, so we have our 2 cups of flour in here. And then we're going to need a half a cup of brown sugar. So with brown sugar, we've talked about this a little bit before. Always try to pack it down as much as you can. So overfill it and then push on the top to pack it down there. There we go. So we're going to finish up our dry ingredients here. So we have a tablespoon of baking powder. And if you guys are like me, sometimes you run out of baking powder. I don't know if you guys know this. It's a combination of cream of tartar and baking soda. So baking soda is a base and it's alkaline, and you add an acid to get baking soda to rise and leaven things. Whereas baking powder has baking soda in it along with cream of tartar. That's really the only difference between the two. And so if you don't have baking powder, I have a DIY recipe that I'll post here in just a minute. Someone remind me of that as we go along, and I'll post it when we finish up here. So that was a tablespoon of baking powder, and then a half a teaspoon of salt. And today I'm using a kosher salt, or you can use a fine sea salt as well. And then I have a teaspoon of that yummy roasted cinnamon that Corinne had shared with us. Oh, that's good that you said that, Janet. The white can be a little bright on the countertop. I just saw that. So we are just going to, you can take a spoon or anything that you have. I'm just going to crush up this brown sugar and stir this around real quick. And I'm basically just breaking up the brown sugar chunks that are in here. There we go. So just stir that together. Yeah.
How much cinnamon did you have?
We used 1 teaspoon of cinnamon.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to grab our egg and our butter out of the refrigerator, as well as our buttermilk. So 1 egg, we're going to need 6 tablespoons of butter, and then 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. So I'm going to go grab that real quick. Okay, so while my fridge is open, Another little happy place that I have that I've shared with folks before, I store my eggs in a basket in my fridge. Not only do I store my eggs in a basket in the fridge, I'll show you. I told you guys I have an obsession with citrus, so I have one just for lemons. I have oranges in here too. So I literally, that's another happy place where I put baskets in my refrigerator and I make my refrigerator look pretty. So I know that kind of seems far-fetched, but it makes me happy. So find your little happy things that you can do in your own kitchen, and I promise it helps with the process. Okay, here we have our egg. Okay, so one of the true secrets of making scones is you want to be dealing with cold ingredients. And so we're going to start off, I said, with the 6 tablespoons of butter. And so I'm going to just cut this here. There's 8 tablespoons typically in a stick. So we just need 6 today. And so you want to keep this super cold. So that's why I had said to keep it in the refrigerator. And also, I have been known to use frozen butter quite a bit when I make pastry. Then you know you're dealing with extra cold butter. Today I didn't freeze it just because I knew I'd be mixing it by hand. And I just cut it right on the paper on the and I dice it. So I don't know if you guys saw what I did there. I cut it in half and then I flipped it over and I cut it again. So that way when you go back through, you're getting nice little squares of butter. So we're going to add that in here. And so this is the part that most people don't like because when a recipe says you have to cut in butter, you have a couple of options. Like I had told you guys, I like to use a food processor and cut it in because it just grinds it up nice and finely and it gets the butter into like this coarse cornmeal kind of texture. But there's different ways to do it. So there's a couple of different ways. You can use a pastry cutter. That's what this is. So if you guys happen to have a pastry cutter, can use that. You can use 2 knives and you basically go in and you cut and slice in this motion back and forth like this. Or grab your fork and you do the exact same thing and you push the butter down. And this particular method of doing this by hand, whatever method you choose, the pastry cutter, the knives, or the fork, or another thing you can do is you can grate butter as well. And that gets it finely, if you grate it with the cheese grater, that will do it too. It makes it a little bit easier. So I will just use my handy dandy pastry cutter. So this is going to take a few minutes, you guys. Give yourself, we're probably looking at 5 minutes. I don't think you can really rush this process, but my tip to you guys is if your butter is room temperature, that's not going to be a good thing because it'll just basically mash together. And when it cooks, the butter is going to rise above the batter, and hopefully that doesn't happen to us. But why I'm thinking of this, and I forgot to do it at the start, is you guys are going to want to grab a baking sheet and line it with parchment paper. Today we really just need the 1. You can use 2 if you want. And then you're going to want to put on your oven at 425. So let's get that preheating. I even put up a big note under my monitor that said 425 in parchment paper, and I forgot to tell you guys that. I got to rambling. You guys have, you have to keep me on track a little bit with these I think last week when I was demonstrating the focaccia at the end, I forgot to sprinkle on the salt. So I hope you guys followed the recipe that I sent. I know the salt was in there at the end. But you guys just keep me in track because you have that recipe right there.
Elaine?
Yeah.
Do you have the buttermilk, cream, and egg in that bowl already while you're cutting in the butter?
I do not.
Okay, so it's just the butter at this point.
Butter and the dry ingredients.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so I just scrape my pastry cutter as we go here. If a lot gets stuck in there, I just do that with the knife. And you can start to see it breaking down a little bit, but it's in still big chunks. And you're just going to push down. Or if you're using a knife, I mean, you guys can let me know what you're using. But if you're using a knife, I mean, a lot of people, that's all they used for years and years and years. Growing up, my mom would, I don't think she hardly ever used this. She would always use the knife technique.
With my arthritis, I'm using the food processor.
You know, that's exactly why I do the food processor as well. Like maybe a decade ago, I had a couple of hand surgeries, and finding the food processor to do a lot of things like grating, and I love to grate blocks of cheese in it and any kind of veggie. It just takes literally a second. So I became hooked after that. So I hear you, whoever said that to me about the arthritis, I get that.
Yeah, the fork is working well too.
Yes, it does. The fork works great. And you just have to be patient is all. That's why I actually am glad I'm showing you guys this method. Because I've been testing your patience a little bit with the bread series. And this, we're just using, you know, our site. We're looking, a lot of times when you're making dough, you're looking for pea-sized chunks. Well, in this case, we're not looking for those big chunks. It's really that fine cornmeal looking texture that we're looking for. And it really makes a big difference in how your scone turns out. I don't know how you guys feel about scones, but I think that restaurants, if you've had them at bakeries, I think of them as like dried hockey pucks. A lot of times you don't get a good scone. And so I think what you guys are going to like about these two recipes is that this scone, I personally like them a little moist and tender. They're not like, my mouth is probably, or my facial expression is probably showing you that I don't care for a dried scone that crumbles. That's no fun to eat. And so this I like because it's going to be a moist and tender scone that I think you guys will enjoy. Okay, we are getting pretty close, and I bet that was a full 5 minutes. And then it comes together really quickly after this. So hopefully this is translating that you guys can see. There we go. All right. Then I'm just going to scrape one last time here. And you guys can run a knife through there and just look and make sure it's looking pretty crumbly and it's even throughout. Okay, that looks good. Okay, put this in the sink here. All right, so now we're gonna need an egg, like I said. So we'll crack that into, you could do it in a small bowl. I'm just using a glass measuring dish here. And then we are going to need a 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. And you guys, if you have buttermilk that's been sitting there for a while, make sure you shake it just to make sure it gets mixed together. So 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. We're basically just creating our wet ingredients here. And then we're going to need a teaspoon and a half of maple extract. So John, are you doing the lemon scones?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay, so what I want you to do is add a teaspoon and a half of lemon juice. Is that what I say in that?
I'll have to check how much I got out of that.
Okay, you're gonna need some, you should get a tablespoon at least, if you have one lemon.
Yep, probably about that.
Good.
And I do have lemon juice I could add as well if I need more than that.
Okay. Stick with the fresh one. Makes a night and day difference. Stick
Okay.
with fresh. And so squeeze as much as you can out of it. Use a teaspoon and a half of, I did print out that recipe. Let me just double check. I said a tablespoon of lemon juice. John, go ahead and just use, since you just have the one lemon.
Yep.
So use a teaspoon and a half of lemon juice to add to it, and then we'll use the rest for the glaze on top.
Sounds good.
Everyone else, just when you get the lemon poppy seed recipe printed off, go ahead and just follow that. And
Unfortunately, I can't look at it while I'm doing this, but okay. If you can kind of clue me to take a look over there if there's something that where it differs.
Yeah, that's really the only place it differs, and the poppy seeds.
Yeah, which I don't have, so we're good.
So that works out well. So one thing I also wanted to mention, and I will post this while we're talking about it real quick. Let me find it. Okay, I'm going to post in the chat, you guys, how to make your own baking powder if you're ever short on that, or how to make your own buttermilk. I rarely have buttermilk on hand, and so I do this all the time. You take literally, I get a glass measuring dish, I pour vinegar in the bottom. Usually it's about a tablespoon, and you want to use white vinegar, and then add a cup of milk to the top of it. Let it sit there and it'll start to curdle up, and use that, and it works great. You can use lots of different things. You can use lemon juice as your acid. If you don't have white vinegar on hand, you can take plain yogurt that you have and add some milk to it and stir that up. That'll get you a buttermilk consistency. So there's lots of different substitutes, but I included those couple of tricks in case you are ever missing, you just don't have it on hand. Yeah, sour cream works too. Yep, yogurt or sour cream works great as a substitute for buttermilk as well. So we're going to take these wet ingredients and stir them up here. And we're basically just trying to break up that egg. And then so we have our dried ingredients here. I'm just going to form a well in the center there. And I'm just going to pour half of this into the batter here. And then my new favorite toy is the Danish whisk that Tina had told us about a couple of weeks ago. And just go ahead and begin to stir that mixture up until the flour begins to incorporate. We don't want to overmix. That's the other secret to scones, to get that tender, moist scone that we want. And then just go ahead and pour the second half of your wet ingredients in. There we go. And we are just going to stir it up. And when you see that the flour has been incorporated, that's when you want to stop. Still see it on the bottom. And I'm going to actually add in just a splash more of buttermilk. And it's only because on the bottom, I have a lot of crumbs. I'm just gonna add in a tablespoon on the bottom. So if you find that it looks a little drier than you want, just add in a splash of buttermilk. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to stop there because I see that all the flour has been incorporated. I'm just going to... Okay. Put that off to the side. So we're going to set this off to the side, and you guys probably know by now, some of you who are new to joining us, I love when working with doughs to use this plastic wrap. It's professional food service film that you get at Costco or Sam's, and it works fantastic. So I'm going to go get a sheet of that and lay it down. And I do this just as, I know I repeat myself every week, but I want to at least let the newbies in on these little secrets that we have talked about in all the classes. We use this food film like plastic wrap, but it's not the same as plastic wrap. It works so much better than cling wrap. There we go. And it just saves cleanup tremendously. All right. So we need to grab some flour and just sprinkle a handful down like that. And then go ahead and grab your measuring cup of flour and just put some up at the top here and have it available in case you need it. So I always like to put it on my hands. And then we're just going to turn out the dough. And if it doesn't plop out, then just make sure you have flour on your hands and use your hand like a scraper. And just scrape it out into a pile onto your counter there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab some more flour and sprinkle our hands, get them nice and coated. And then we're going to sprinkle the top lightly with flour. And then what I want you guys to do is kind of cup around the outside and push in, and that'll begin to form a ball. And then I like to spin it. And the reason I like to spin it is I like to feel how it handles sticking to the plastic wrap. And so it will only make sense if you're doing this and spinning it. If it moves and spins easily, you know you have enough flour underneath. If you feel that it catches, then lift it up and sprinkle some flour under here, add some in. You feel like it needs it. And I always like to be light-handed with flour because you can always add more. And so now that I've spun it a couple of times, it spins real easily. Now I'm just going to go in the center and press down. And we're aiming for a circle. And in the recipe, I say about 8 inches. It's going to make for a pretty big scone. So if you want, when I originally put out this recipe, I double this recipe, so it makes a ton. And I realize not everyone is going to want as many as if this recipe was doubled. And so we're just shaping it into a disc shape. And then any extra flour you guys can kind of brush off the top there. And just like that. And then let me just wash my hands so you guys can take a second. Just doing this along with me to wipe up your hands real quick. And I think that we're going to be able to finish these by the end of class. So you guys will all be able to see. So I'm going to scoop this stuff off to the side. And I'm going to grab my baking sheet. Set this here. So if you guys did order that Danish whisk that Tina had sent, it came with a pastry dough scraper. I had one already. This is mine. But all you really need, You can use that if you want. This is handy for making pie crust because then you're not touching the dough and warming it up. And one method that I forgot to mention about cutting in butter, sometimes recipes will tell you that you can do it by hand. I highly recommend you don't touch it because the warmth of your hands will melt that butter down. So I just froze. Can you guys still, can you see me okay? Okay, I froze there for a second.
I can still hear you, but you're frozen for picture.
Okay, am I good now? Oh,
Nope, still frozen, but I can hear you.
happened once before, didn't we? Huh. Let me go check and see if my connection. See if my connection was loosed. Did that help? Still frozen?
Still frozen. Tell the kids to stop playing video games.
Yeah, you know that they're in school right now, so I don't know if that's messing things up. Let me go try to unplug the camera and we'll see if that does it. Let's see, did that work? Still the same.
No.
I'll be darned. Now, what about the overhead? Is that frozen?
Yes.
It is. Okay, I think I'm going to try. So, Amy, I'm going to try exiting and closing this. Back in business. Okay, so we were going to cut this, and the way I cut it, you can use a pastry scraper if you have one. We are just going to be cutting it in half. So I like to flour my knife. So you cut it in half, and then I reflour it because that dough's sticky on the inside. And then we're going to cut it the other way halfway. And then I just flour back on it. And now we're going to cut them in half again. And so we're aiming for 8 wedges. So you cut in half, and then you divide each of them in half again. There we go. And then what you can do, you can use the knife if you want. The pastry scraper works great too to slide up underneath, or you can get a spatula. It's a little bit of flour on it and just slide it up underneath too. And that does it. And we're going to transfer it to our baking sheet here. Hopefully you guys can see that. And I always alternate them. So I put the longer end. You guys can see how I'm doing that. I just alternate the direction that the triangle is going. And funny enough, if you guys have ever had scones, I mean, you do not have to cut them in wedges like this. I often will use a round cookie cutter, and it works the exact same way. You actually get a little bit more out of it than the wedges. Otherwise, you'll get 8 large scones if you do it this way. And just add some more flour if it feels sticky. I'll just keep adding here. And I will show you what it looks like here in just a second. There we go. All right, let's make sure you guys can see that. So I have all of our 8 scones here, and that flour, some of it will stay on top. That's why we try to use as little flour as we can. You can brush it off a little bit if you want. And we're going to put that in the oven for 12 minutes, and they're going to be pretty lightly brown at the 12-minute mark. Oh, we might finish in the nick of time here too. Okay, so now this is the fun part. As you guys know, with using the plastic wrap, is it looks like I cut through it, but you basically just fold up. Whoop, I did cut through it. So it's, there you go. And it just helps with your cleanup. So we all love that. And then I can talk to you guys about the glaze and all the questions that have come in on the chat. So let me just wash my hands one more time here. And I'm just going to wipe this down. Now, with everyone who's baking along there, were you guys able to get yours into the oven? Hopefully so. Okay, so let's take a look at our chat here. I'll pull mine back up. Oh, and it looks like I lost everyone's chat from last time. So you guys probably are going to have to fill me in. Oh, Elaine asked, the only question that I'm seeing on my chat since I rejoined was what's the difference between a scone and a biscuit? And that's an excellent question because they sure seem identical to each other. There's actually only one difference between a biscuit and a scone. And the difference is an egg. The only difference between a scone and a biscuit. Someone said, can I use reconstituted powdered buttermilk? You absolutely can use that. My dough is very sticky. So do I add more flour? Okay, so Susan, underneath of it, when you tried to spin it, did it spin pretty easily? If it did, sprinkle some on top. And then as you shape it and pat it into that 8-inch disc, it should feel better to you on the surface of it. Now, as you cut into it, the inside is going to be moist. Yes. And so let me know if after you sprinkle that flour on top, it was still super sticky. The more flour you add, the drier it's going to be. And so the top of it, you don't want it to be overly tacky, but it will be slightly tacky to the touch.
Elaine, someone asked whether I had added cinnamon to the lemon poppy seed, which unfortunately, yes, I did.
You know what? I completely skipped over that on the recipe as I was looking there. That's okay. I think, who knows what it'll taste like with the cinnamon. It might just give it a nice touch.
It's an adventure.
Yeah, it is an adventure, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah, we got that one. So yeah, I can't see the other chats. Let me think of that. Let's see. Someone had said, I didn't get to read that first message about the baking center and that your husband said it takes up too much space in your cabinet. Well, what I would say back to that, I think that's what the message said. Correct me if I got that wrong. I would say back to that, okay, it's either getting my baked goods and my enjoyment out of the deal. There's kind of it's a win-win situation for everyone involved, for you to be happy with your baking center. The more baking you're going to do.
I just say your garage is your domain. My kitchen is my domain.
Yeah,
and I just don't go for it because it is important to me and it does make me happy and it's easy to have it. You never run out of anything.
You don't. It's all right there. I mean, it's even why I have these big containers. I have 3 of them just for the flour, sugar, and powdered sugar.
Yeah.
And it takes me forever to go through a big vat of powdered sugar of that much. You certainly don't need to buy one for powdered sugar. But for flour and sugar, it comes in super handy to have that. Let's see. Oh my God. Oh, that's fun. Tina talked about how years ago I had told her about how I store my eggs and my lemons in baskets in the fridge, and I've shared that with folks over the years. And to me, it feels a little bit eccentric to do it. But when you open your fridge, it really makes you happy. Whatever container you enjoy. I just happen to find these baskets that had the chalkboard on the front, and I wrote, and I knew that it was going to be lemons and eggs because I have those two things in my fridge at all times. And so there's lots of fun tricks that you can do to make your fridge a happy place too, other than, like for me, the baking center, having it all making me feel like I'm structured and orderly, which I'm not that person. I try, but I'm So
And we found poppy seed.
Oh, you found poppy seed.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Excellent. So you can add that in. So Deborah said, I just retired and this is the most fun I've had in a long time. This me stuff is great and love your presentation being so empowering to give it a try our way. Yeah, I don't want you to take what I do and try to mold it for you. I want you to mold what you want in your kitchen that's going to make you get in the kitchen and bake for yourself and your family and your friends. I don't think it's about how you do it. It's just the actual doing of it and enjoying that process. Oh, and John said, we definitely want to see photos of your scones. Yes. So John, we're going to be waiting for you for your scones. And speaking of which, we are now in the 6-minute mark. So those are getting close. So this morning, I hadn't yet decided. I remembered this morning about the lemon poppy seed scones. So I made those up this morning. And I can show you what those look like while we're waiting. So like I said, Mondays are happy days in our house. The boys are like, yes, we've not only had maple scones, we've now had, lemon scones. And so this is how they turn out. So they puff up super nicely. You guys can see they get much bigger than what you think they're going to get. And then when you open them, they're moist. They don't break apart. You don't see crumbs flying down everywhere. And the inside it's super soft and tender. So that's kind of the goal. And it gets just a wee bit brown on the edge and the edges are crumbly. That's the only part you want crumbly. The rest of it is light and tender. And it's because we didn't overwork that dough or mix it. A lot of recipes will tell you to knead scones. And I've tried lots of different ways. This is the best way I found so they do not get dry and crumbly. Let me just turn on my light here. Yeah, these are looking good. I don't know if you guys can see in there. There's a reflection, but they're looking good. They're getting nice and puffy. Let's see. So go back, you guys. If someone can look at that first chat and just let me know if I missed any of the questions that you guys asked.
I think you got it all, Elaine.
Did I? Okay, excellent. So you guys have I gave you the DIY for the baking powder and the buttermilk. Good. And then Deborah asks, you don't use convection on your breads. Actually, I do use, I have a convection oven. And for those of you who are joining us, all a convection oven is, it just means you have a fan in the back of your oven and it helps evenly distribute all the heat. And I use a convection for everything. It bakes pretty much the same way. My lower one is in a convection. But I rarely talk about that because I want anyone, even if you don't have a convection oven, it's fine. You just want to aim for the center of your oven because sometimes on a non-convection oven, your heat element is at the top or other times it's on the bottom. And unless you know where that heat is coming from, your safest bet is always dead center in the middle of your oven. So even when I use convection, if I'm just doing a single sheet, I just use the center of my oven. That's that. Okay, so when these are done, we're going to set them out, but we're going to need them to cool for at least 5 minutes. And I'll probably regret saying that because I'll jump the gun and start my glaze and it won't have been 5 minutes. And if you do that, the glaze will pretty much fall off of your scones. So you don't want them to cool forever, but let them cool for 5 to 10 minutes. Then you can whip up the glaze and we can start that now. We've only got 2 more minutes here. You'll just need a small bowl with a cup of powdered sugar, and you'll need a whisk so you can get that out. And then you're going to need that maple extract again. And I had told you guys a while back, I don't have a lot of extracts. Vanilla is my favorite one. Next week, we're going to need banana extract. And for this one, maple extract. It's not the easiest to find. I went in search of some more this weekend. It's hard to find in the store nowadays. It's the darndest thing. I don't know if anyone else struggled with finding it. I picked up 3 or 4 different kinds this weekend after running. I think I ran to 5 different stores to try to find it, just to make sure I had enough. And they all are different. There's some that are really light in color. This one is dark, and I think it adds a more intense maple flavor, and that makes it fun. So like Tracy found some on Amazon, which is great. And then how could you use maple syrup? You can certainly use it. If you're using maple syrup instead of extract for the glaze, you're going to have to pay attention to the amount of milk you use or cream that you use, because it'll be too loose of a glaze if you use too much. So there we go. So you guys can see what these look like. They look awesome. Yum. We're going to set them over here. I'll let them cool. And I'll just turn that off there. Okay. So we're going to let those cool. Hopefully, we're going to go a few minutes over for class. If anyone has to go, we'll see you next week. Lindsay's or the spice store has it. I did not go down to the spice store. I probably should have ran down there. I didn't think to do that. But just a heads up, before we start this glaze, I'm kind of stalling to give that time to cool. Next week, we're making banana donuts. And we'll have a special guest joining us for those banana donuts. I am traveling this next weekend. One of our kids has the Pac-12. Our daughter has a Pac-12 tournament, and we're hoping that they're going to be in the championship on Sunday night. So we are flying there, assuming they win Friday night. We're flying there Sunday to watch the game, and we're flying back Monday. And so if I have service on Monday, I will join in and be there as we show the video for the banana donuts. But if for some reason I'm not there, it's just because I was not able to access it. But I wanted to let you guys know that in advance. Amy's from the library, she's going to run that video. I'm going to give it to her this week. And I think you guys will enjoy that. It's a fun one. And then we'll be starting up a whole new series. So what I'd love to hear from you guys is what you want to see in the next series or what's to come. I have a couple of ideas. We're approaching March in Colorado, or we are in March, I guess. And I was thinking more wintry things, but I know that in some places it feels like spring to some folks. But to us, it's still winter here. So I was going to stick with more wintry type dishes. But if there's something you're wanting to see, let me know, because I haven't finalized it yet. So definitely let me know. And now we'll just pick back up on this glaze. So we started with a cup of powdered sugar, and then we're going to add in more maple extract. So this time we're going for 1.5 teaspoons. of the maple. And then you can use cream or whole milk, or any kind of milk that you have, but I would suggest that you heat it up. So I'm going to do that real quick. And I'm just doing it for 30 seconds, but the reason you do that is it helps make the glaze set when you drizzle it across your scones. If you don't do it, it still works. But you know how you get that crackly finish where it kind of hardens just a hair? Warming it will help with that process. So let me see what these questions are here. Oh, vitamin cottage. You know, Susan, I did not even think to check vitamin cottage for the extract. That's a good tip. Can the donuts be baked instead of fried? Not these particular donuts that I'm sharing. I want to add in baked donuts because someone had asked me early on to show baked donuts. But when they had asked for donuts, it immediately brought up this banana donut recipe that's been in my family for a long time. And so I stuck with that one, but I'd like to add baked donuts. It's a little bit different of a recipe that you want to use if you're going to bake them in the oven.
Elaine, for the
Oh, go ahead, John.
for the lemon poppy seed, I have used lemon. That does not have the cream, right? For the glaze.
You're just going to be using the powdered sugar and the lemon zest.
Uh-huh.
You have that, and then add in the rest of your lemon juice.
Yep, I did that, but I don't have any. I didn't use the poppy seed anywhere, so I wasn't sure where I was supposed to use that.
You know what? Add it into your glaze.
I can do that.
But typically what we would have done is instead of that cinnamon, we would have added in the poppy seeds in the recipe for you. So my milk is set. We're aiming for to start off with 2 to 3 tablespoons. I try to just do a tablespoon at a time because I'd rather have it too thick than too thin. So I just put in a tablespoon and just keep stirring because you're going to think you don't have enough. But that powdered sugar will slowly incorporate. And the reason I give a range too, if you use organic powdered sugar, it's much thicker. And so you're going to need a little bit more. There's our 2nd tablespoon. And that's going to be enough because all you want it to be thick, but you also want to look for that it's pourable. And see, this may even be just a wee bit. You guys can see that ribbon effect there. I'm actually going to go grab just a little bit more powdered sugar because I want it a little bit thicker. And the great thing is if you do, if it's too loose, you can always just add a little bit more powdered sugar in to thicken it up.
And if it's too thick, add a little more lemon juice.
Yep, and if you don't, did you run out of lemon juice?
Fresh lemon juice, yeah, but I still have a bottle.
Yeah, and you know, if you guys switch over, you can certainly add the bottle, but the flavor changes if you use the bottled version. I'm such a huge fan of fresh lemons and oranges and limes. And that's what's fun too, is take that lemon poppy seed recipe for the scones and switch it out for orange and cranberry. For the maple, add some walnuts in here. You can make lime scones. And so they're all interchangeable. It makes it so fun. So they're thickened back up. So now all we do is just drizzle it over the top. And there goes my whisk. And for those of you grabbing your baking sheet, just make sure that it's not too hot. I reached for it, but my hands are pretty much impervious to heat nowadays. But you just grab a spoon and you just drizzle back and forth over the top, that glaze. And what's nice is that parchment paper is already there catching everything that overflows. And you just drizzle it over, and I usually like to do one round first and then look for any spots that I might have missed. But the reason I had chose maple extract is a lot of people don't use maple, and I don't use it too often. I use it in my cinnamon rolls for my glaze. I actually use maple extract and a tablespoon of coffee. So freshly brewed coffee with your powdered sugar. It's a really yummy taste for cinnamon rolls. I think that's up on the blog somewhere. We did a tutorial early on in COVID with our cinnamon rolls. And then I'll just go back through. And what's interesting, you guys can see that it's already setting just a little bit, how I told you how that warm milk makes it set. And it's nice too, because if you do have any remnants of the flour still on top anywhere, this covers it up. And they look pretty. And it smells so good. That's why I chose the maple, because a lot of people don't use it. That's what I started to say. And it's got such a fun, yummy flavor. It makes me think of the East Coast, and Tina's joining us from the East Coast, and I'm sure she gets wonderful maple syrup and all sorts of fun things. There we go. How's everyone doing there with theirs? Let's see what we have here. Oh, Janet said that's a good one. Sheet pan suppers, that's a good one. Can definitely add that in. I'd like to see a heavier rustic bread with rye or buckwheat, something that is hearty and chewy. Deborah, I will definitely add that in. I wanted to bring that back in later in the fall when we do. I have some really great bread recipes that I want to share with you guys. So we might take a break from our breads. But I wanted, hopefully the spring and the summer, I was going to really stick with some summery dishes and get us outside too. But I will add those back in to the series for sure. Mediterranean meals, and that is the one that the doc recommends. Yes, that's my favorite style to eat, is the Mediterranean diet style of eating the fresh whole foods. So yes, we will incorporate that. I'd be interested in this series involving the scientific components. For instance, the effects of replacing butter with oil or using honey instead of sugar. Yes, why some ingredients need to be room temperature or melted. I think this usually more noticeable in some baked goods compared to others. Excellent point. I would love to do that one too, with the science behind it. I would never consider myself a scientist, but I can share what I know about using those interchangeably in your baking, especially in baked goods. Oh, and love hummus. Yes, I love hummus too. That is a good one. I can certainly share a really good hummus recipe. That's a great one for summer. The hard part is preparing in advance and then coming up with it, and then the weather being a little different. I like to go kind of with the mood of the season. And so maybe we'll get a little bit flexible with our schedule and change it up as we go. Go ahead, John.
Oh, this Deborah, I want to know why exchanging oil for applesauce didn't work in my muffin recipes. I thought it was sort of a one-to-one exchange, and boy, it did not work. They were gooey.
Yes. What kind of applesauce were you using?
Jarred, unsweetened.
Jarred unsweetened. Yeah, that's what I used to switch it up, and it was a one-to-one. The other reason, well, here's the thing. sometimes you think it's the substitute that did it, but it may not be. For example, something I meant to mention to you guys is that when I talk about eggs in a recipe, I always use large eggs. Some people are using smaller eggs or medium size, and that will change your recipe. So it's really the ratio of what you're using. So I would be interested in, did you use our muffin recipe from that first class, Deborah?
No, I've had one for many years, an all brand one that I've adjusted for altitude and everything.
Mhm.
And it just came out gooey in the middle.
Gooey. I would love to see that recipe. If you'll send it to me, I'll look at it, and I'm guessing it's probably something else, is my guess. But I'd have to take a look at it to know for sure. A lot of times you can, that's the interesting part with baking, as you guys know, is that you try to substitute and you think it's going to come out and then it flops, and that's no fun. So I can certainly play around with that and get that set up for you, Deborah, so you can try it and enjoy your bran muffins that you're making with a healthier change to it. And Maria just asked, thanks, Maria. She says, awesome class. Can previous class recipes be found online? They can. We'd like to, oh, Maria just did it. Or Elaine just shared it. Thank you for doing that. The library has posted all of the prior recipes and the videos or the tutorials, whichever ones we have up there, all on this website. And you guys can go back and look at them at any time you want and help you through. How about a class on substitute various ingredients? Yes, that's a good one too. I have to keep my chat open and write all this down because I know I won't be able to remember everyone's. But I hope you guys will try these. I'll show you just like now that they're cool. I'll show you the inside. So again, you know, just on the edges, it's crispier. And then on the inside, it's super soft and moist. And so now you can go. Traditionally, scones are meant to be enjoyed with a hot beverage because they were dry to begin with. And you can't really not enjoy them with a beverage or a drink because they tend to be dry. But you guys are going to find that these are super moist. You don't necessarily need a drink with them, but the other reason I chose this is I think, you know, we talked about this, I think early on in the baking series, that during COVID, I think it's taught all of us to slow down. Hold on, I gotta see this. I see this, John is sharing his. Those look great, John. Fantastic. Oh my gosh, they came out beautiful. I love that. Do we have anyone else on here? Let's see, baking along.
John, how do they taste?
I have not tried yet. And as well, the icing may have gone on a little too soon because it ran a little bit, as you can see down in here.
You have to taste it to tell us how the cinnamon and the lemon work.
Yeah, let me give it a shot. Take this one apart. Real nice and moist inside.
The one thing I'll say too is, especially with these maples and the lemon, the longer they sit, the better they get because that flavor develops. The maple or the lemon from this morning, my kids ate the entire batch already. I just have these two left.
These are to die for. They are that good.
See, that's the best when it's not me telling you, it's someone else who's telling you. Love it, John. Awesome. That's so good. There was something, I'm trying to think of what I was, oh, yes. So I lost my train of thought there. So I was telling you guys all in class here in just a second, but I was sharing with you guys that the reason also why I chose scones for today is I think that COVID taught us a lot, right, about life, and that the fact that it made us all slow ourselves down. And that's what I think about with scones. It's not something you can gobble up really fast. You're going to sit down with a cup of tea. And if you have someone who can come over, your family or anyone that you can share it with, you just enjoy each other and you take that time to slow down in your life. And that's why I put the scones in here. And then I hope that when we are out socializing again, that we all can get together at some point and do that together and share, you know, these recipes and your favorites with each other. I think that would be super fun. But I just wanted this to be a reminder to you guys to slow down in your life and just savor small things, even if it's as basic as a maple scone or a lemon scone. So let's see, did anyone else finish up with theirs? Look. So anyone pipe in if you are still waiting for something to come out of the oven? I don't want to close up until I know that everyone's done here. I'll give you guys just a couple of minutes. I know if you have to clean your hands up.
I have a question for John.
Yeah, that's
John,
great.
would you add the cinnamon again, knowing now that it was not supposed to be in there, but was it good enough that you'd put it in again?
Probably would. I don't really taste it very much in combination with the lemon and the poppy seed. But and I would add the poppy seed earlier because having it just in the icing makes them look a little weird too because there's all the poppy seeds on the top. But still, it's quite good.
And the fresh lemon, I think, makes a huge difference. It makes it bright. And it makes you happy, I think. Oh, here we go, Tracy. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yours came out too.
Oh,
Hey, wonderful. And is your son baking along with you today? Did he give it thumbs up? Did he try them yet?
Yeah, he did, and he likes them. He doesn't like to be on camera though.
That's perfectly fine. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's awesome. Love it.
can't wait.
So Susan said mine are not as pretty at all, but they are cooling. Hey, that's okay. Susan, do you feel comfortable showing us what yours look like and how they aren't so pretty? Or you can just tell us too. Describe them to us.
Ready? I'm gonna turn on the camera. Wait.
Here.
They're waiting.
Okay, let me do this. See if you can show them down there. No, down there.
Your background is getting in the way.
Oh, okay. Oh, well.
We got it a little bit, Susan. Yes, so on that, I think the shape changed just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And Susan, was it you at the beginning who was saying yours was a little wet, or was that someone?
Yeah, it was sticky and wet.
Okay.
So they're really weird shapes.
No, you know what? They're still gonna taste the same.
Yeah, they taste great.
Yeah, oh, good. Okay. And so on next time, I guess did you pat flour on your hand?
Either way, whether I was here or not, scribbling down.
Oh, I guess I'm touching. Somewhat drizzling the glaze.
Well, mine look pretty odd as well. But that makes them look artisan.
Yeah, exactly.
Just say they're artisan. They're not. They're just not machine made. They're handmade for sharing.
I like that. That is a good way to look at it. Yeah, and I think that after you make them so many times, then you kind of get that whole technique down where you start to perfect what they look like. And so I think you did terrific, Susan, with what we were able to see. So that was great. Oh, thanks, Tina, for saying that. Okay, you guys, I know I've kept you long enough here. Oh gosh, it's 2:21. Thanks for bearing with me for this extra long class. Super fun to see you guys. Hope you enjoy them and hope you enjoy the banana donuts next week. And hopefully I'll see you guys on the video next week. But if not, you know where I am, and we'll see you the following week. So have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Patty. Bye, Tracy. Bye, Tina.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
John. Bye, Debbie. Bye, Robin. Bye, Susan. Bye, Elaine and Diana and Linda. We've got everyone there. 2 more. So Amy, I think I'm going to grab a pen and, oh, this will be, the chat saves, doesn't it?